Hey everyone, and welcome to the channel. I am on beautiful Mount Tamalpais in Marin County, California. We are just north of San Francisco on this beautiful mountain, and we're going to try to explore a World War II plane crash that happened here in November of 1944. I'm going to tell you all about it in a minute, but first I want to tell you about the mountain a little bit and how do you get up here. I'm actually going to hike from the summit today. The most common way to try to get to the airplane crash is to hike from below, from a place called the Mountain Home. And there's a parking area down there, and you can catch a fire road that leads you up to, probably you would take gravity car trail up to railroad grade, and then where railroad grade meets a trail called WWII, you'll see a little trail called the Vic Hahn Trail, which I'm going to catch down here in just a little bit, and then you hike up to it, and that's probably the easier way. But I think it's in some ways a little bit more interesting to hike from the summit up here, and you can see it's a beautiful day. It rained yesterday, so we're probably going to have some clear views today. It's quite foggy right now, but it'll probably clear up. It's just a spectacular day, as you can see. It was a cold and dreary night on November 30th, 1944, and the airplane in question is a Martin PBM-5 Mariner, and it's basically a seaplane or a boat plane, very large. They're kind of cumbersome. They're not super fast. I think their top speed is around 200 miles an hour. They're not super maneuverable, but they're quite useful. They're equipped with 50 caliber machine guns. They can be used as a bomber as well, and they were actually used over toward Europe as anti-German submarine neutralizers, and they did quite well. I think they knocked out a number of submarines. They lost a few of them. And then there were 5 versions, and I believe this one that crashed here was a PBM-5. It was the final version, and I believe it was the only version that had landing gear. The rest of them could only land and take off on water. I'm going to tell you more about it as we head toward the crash. It's known to be quite difficult to find, but I believe that I can find it. I think I know where it is. So I think we're going to have good luck today. The purpose of the hike is twofold. One is to just enjoy the beauty of the hike, and then also kind of find this mysterious airplane crash. Another reason to go is just to pay tribute to the young men who lost their lives. Yesterday was Veterans Day, actually, so it seems a fitting time to go check it out. Let's take a walk on the trail here, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about the mountain. Right behind me you can see that I was at a lookout here, and I have traveled here on the Verna-Dunshee Trail. From the summit, there's a lookout that you can see over. Now normally we'd see San Francisco over that way, however it's fogged in, and maybe it'll clear out a little bit later. But what you can do is from that lookout at the summit, you can park at the summit. It costs $8 for a parking permit, and then you can hike to that overlook and you will see a sign that says Verna-Dunshee Trail. So we take this nice paved easy trail, and this sort of walks around the mountain, and you can gain access to the true summit from here. But we're going to break off and we're going to catch the Vic Hahn Trail. Now the Vic Hahn Trail is a kind of a dicey trail. It's very steep and very rocky. So if you're the type that likes to use hiking poles, this would be a good time to pull them out. Now I'm one of those people that can definitely benefit from hiking poles. However, because I'm filming and I need my hands free, I'm going to wing it without. And it's certainly doable. But as we get around this corner, I think we're going to be able to see the summit. Okay, as we approach the Vic Hahn Trail, this is the Verna-Dunshee Trail. And you can stay on it and go back to the summit. And if you look up that way carefully, you'll see the summit house up there. What we're going to do is drop down right here on this steep, dicey trail. This is going to take us to the plane wreck. This is the Tamalpais Trail. Now I mentioned the Vic Hahn Trail, and I was sort of leading you the wrong way. This is the Tamalpais Trail, which is going to take us to the Vic Hahn Trail. And it says WWII Trail. Well, it looks like it says 11 miles. However, I believe it's supposed to say 1.1 miles. WWII is an interesting name, which I'll mention in a minute here. But first, let me tell you a little bit about Mount Tamalpais and mountain biking, because it's got an interesting history. Back in the late 70s, there was a group of guys around here who started converting cruiser Schwinn's into kind of the first mountain bikes, and they called them clunkers. And they were better at going downhill than up, so a lot of times these guys would just kind of push the bikes uphill and then bomb down the hills just for fun. They later added some gears to them. There were guys like Gary Fisher, Joe Breeze, Charlie Kelly, Charlie Cunningham, Steve Potts, whole host of guys, and sorry if I didn't mention some of your heroes, but these guys are credited with inventing the mountain bike. in the late 70s. But simultaneously in another place in Colorado called Crested Butte, there were some guys doing the same thing. So there's been some debate on who was first, but it doesn't really matter. It just happened. And there's an old race, downhill race out here, way down the hill over that away toward Fairfax. It was called the Repack, and they called it the Repack because back then they were using coaster brakes on the rear on the old single speeds. That road was so steep and dicey that the hubs would get extremely hot on the way down, and they'd burn out the grease on the rear hub, and they had to repack it after doing a couple of runs on Repack. I wouldn't make any disparaging remarks about guys like Gary Fisher, but what I would do is tell you about a mountain bike museum in Fairfax here in Marin County. There's a guy by the name of Joe Breeze, and he's very much involved with the mountain bike museum, and he is the sweetest, kindest, humblest gentleman in the bike industry that I've ever met. He's just a wonderful guy, and he's just a wealth of knowledge about the early days because he was part of it. So if you have a chance to go to the Marin Mountain Bike Museum, definitely check and see if Joe's around, because it'd be worthwhile to go when he's there. But anyway, so Mount Tamalpais is known for a great place to mountain bike, and it's mostly done on the fire roads because it's actually illegal to ride single tracks here on Mount Tamalpais. And that's been a subject of great debate over the years, and I think they're going to have a pilot program and open a few single tracks to mountain bikes, but sometimes people ride them anyway, but whatever. But it's also an absolutely gorgeous place to hike. And this trail here, as you can see, I don't know if you can see it behind me, but it's pretty dicey. We're not even on the Vicon Trail yet, but the views are just spectacular. If you look down this ravine, you'll see some switchbacks of the trail. Maybe if you can see, I'm not sure you can. But down lower in this ravine is actually where the plane crash is. So this is where we're heading. So from our vantage point from up high, we actually head down to the wreck. Now, if you hike from the mountain home, the more common way to go, you're going to be hiking uphill. This is just a different way, and I thought it'd be more interesting. Now, as we head down the hill on this dicey trail, it's probably a good time for me to talk a little bit about the wreck and how it happened. So it was a cold and rainy night on November 30th, 1944, and the plane involved was a Martin PBM-5 Mariner. So this is a seaplane or a boat plane. Humongous plane, not a super powerful or fast plane. I think the top speed was around 200 miles per hour, but it had long range capability. I think it'd go 3,000 miles. And they flew this particular plane out from Florida to the Navy base in Alameda, which is in the East Bay, across the bay. And their next leg was going to be to fly to Hawaii. And this one was going to be deployed in the Pacific theater. So these guys took off at 11:30 or something like that in the night. Dark, rainy, cold, no visibility. And they took off, and shortly thereafter they had engine trouble. And they radioed to the base. Mayday, we've got engine trouble. They answered them back. Dispatcher said, hey, I've got a lot going on right now. They got some other issues. I'll get right back to you. And then they were never heard from again. So to me, obviously, the Alameda folks knew that the plane disappeared. And then the conspiracy started, or the cover-up, I should call it. I'm not a real believer in conspiracy theories, but I do believe that there was a cover-up. And I'll tell you why. So there was a woman that was down at the Mountain Home Inn, the place I mentioned earlier, where you normally start your hike from, which as the crow flies is about 1 mile from the crash site. This woman heard the explosion. She couldn't see anything because it was dark and rainy. But she called the authorities. She called the police and said, hey, there was a plane crash on Mount Tam. And she was told that, oh, no, there was a plane up and it had some issues. And it jettisoned its fuel tank, so that's probably the explosion she heard. Nobody was injured. That plane made it back safely. Everybody's okay. That could have been true, but to my thinking, that was a lie. And it was told to this woman just to keep it from the public, because obviously, you've got a military plane. There's machine guns on it. There's probably military secrets and supplies. And, during wartime, you definitely don't want to reveal stuff to civilians if you don't have to. So that woman had called in the morning. I think there was another woman who called and said the same thing, and she was told the same thing. So they kind of just backed off. But she could see, once it got light, she could see the flames and the fire and on the hill, so she knew something was going on. Next thing that happened was this group of middle school boys, like 12-year-old boys, like 5 of them, decided to hike up on the mountain. And of course, they didn't have video games and smartphones back then, so this was the kind of adventure that kids from that era would do. They hiked up here. To their horror, they found 8 dead Navy airmen, so they just rushed down to the mountain home where they could get to a phone, called authorities, and then the police started taking it seriously, because I think either the police were involved with the cover-up, or more likely they were also misinformed by the Navy. And then, of course, the rescue ensued. The fog is ever changing here. You can see down here. It's probably going to burn off. So over there is San Francisco, and we'll probably get a view of the skyline at some point. So hopefully that will happen. But anyway, continuing with the story, those boys were kind of freaked out. And then there were another set of young men who came up and actually helped the authorities to remove the bodies, and they were involved with that. They got that done. And then, you know, they couldn't get everything out of there right away, so it was looted. So there was a lot of looting going on, which was normal back then and still normal today. It's too bad, but that does happen. Another thing that happened was there was a young girl who caught wind of it, and she decided to send postcards to the families and the loved ones of the affected. And she found some postcards of Mount Tam, and she actually, this is really rocky, sorry. She actually found some postcards with a picture of Mount Tamalpais, and she marked the spot where the wreck was, and she sent her condolences to the families of the affected Navy men. One of the women wrote back because one of the gentlemen was just married a couple of months before this event and just had gotten back from his honeymoon literally 2 weeks before the crash happened. So it was really sad, and she asked the young girl if she could see about retrieving some, personal belongings. Apparently there was a pocket watch, maybe his wallet, or just other personal things. The wedding ring was also mentioned, I think, but that should have been on the body, but you never know. But anyway, apparently those items were never found, so she never got that stuff back. Then the site was kind of looted over the years, and today, I don't know how long ago, but somebody put up a kind of a memorial. They put up some flags where the bodies were found and some more information about the event. So we'll check that out, and the names of all the servicemen. All right, folks. Well, here we are at the trail junction. I'm on the Tamalpais Trail, and then we're going to take the Vic Hahn Trail. All right, I'll give you a little bit of a tip here. This is a log across the trail, and I think that we are getting pretty close. Even if they clear the path through the log, you'll see a cut-off log like this one here, which is right after it. Okay, folks, I found a little bit of a trail into the woods here. It's not really a trail, but it's kind of in the area where I think it should be, but I am not confident at this point. I'm kind of ducking down. I passed another couple of places that are possibilities, but this is definitely kind of a trail. Let's see if I'm on the right track. Okay, folks, this is pretty cool. I went down that trail and I didn't find it. Since it wasn't down there, I assumed it was just a little bit to the north of me. And so I headed north, and guess what? Here it is. Okay, here's the first bit of debris that I found. Here's some more crumpled up stuff. I don't know why I'm talking softly. It is a little bit eerie. It's pretty rugged here. Look at this. Got some color on it. And now is probably a good time to point out that this is considered kind of a memorial. and it is not allowed to take anything from here. Oh, look at that longer piece there. Got a hole in it. Okay, I walked down the hill a little bit just to see if there's anything else down lower, and I didn't see anything, so we're back to where I started here. Lots of debris. As I mentioned, the information plaque and such is up above us, so I'm going to head up there. Okay, so now I'm just above where I was, and this is probably considered the main area because that's where the information plaque is. There's a big pile of debris right here. As you can see, some larger pieces all strewn out. And I realize the light is kind of iffy right now, but we can sneak up around this way. Here's the trail. It's pretty tight. Oops. Tree tried to grab my hat. Don't be a hat grabber. Okay. Yeah, here's some more stuff. Okay, so behind the sign is the way you're supposed to come in. I'll go out that way so we can have a look at that. But let's check out the sign here. And this is going to be some information on what not to do. And I realize the video is kind of lousy. I'll take a separate picture of this so we can read it. Okay, I'm going to read the sign for you. It says, "Attention visitors, this aircraft crash site is of historical significance. It is U.S. government property and is protected by law. Damage to or removal of any portion of this airplane wreckage is a misdemeanor. Possession of removed wreckage is a felony. If you have confidential information concerning the removal or damage of this resource and the persons responsible, please contact MMWD, that's Marin Municipal Water District, Watershed Protection Staff, Sky Oaks Watershed HQ, Fairfax, California." All right, folks, on this post here is attached a bunch of information. There's actually 4 pages in total, but I just wanted to show you the one that mentions the crew there. They were called Combat Aircraft Crew Charlie, and I'm just going to read you these names. Harry Holland, Aviation Chief Machinist Mate. Rodney Jeffers, Aviation Machinist Mate 2nd Class. Thomas Joyce, Jr., Aviation Radio Man 2nd Class. John R. Kelly, Aviation Radio Man 3rd Class. Chapin B. Miller, Ensign. Thomas W. Oliver, Jr., Lieutenant Junior Grade. Wayne D. Paxson, Aviation Ordnance Man 2nd Class. And Joseph Wesley, Lieutenant. Now, I believe Wayne Paxson was the one whose wife wrote and tried to get some items recovered, and apparently it never happened. But anyway, this is just a lot of really good information that's available to you. I'll try to leave it in proper shape here. I think now, on this day after Veterans Day, November 12th, would be an excellent time to give all these brave men who perished here a moment of silence. Well, folks, I just read the literature here. There were some things I already knew, but I hadn't shared with you yet. And one is that there's been a lot of mystery about this crash, about who was on the plane and who else might have been on the plane. And there was apparently one quote-unquote celebrity from the Manhattan Project that was on the plane. That was the rumor anyway. And the Manhattan Project was the atomic bomb project. So it's possible that there was one person on there, a passenger that wasn't accounted for. The other rumor that went around is that there was these strange orange bicycles in the cargo. And apparently those bicycles were Japanese, and we don't know what kind of bicycles they were, but perhaps they were bicycles intended for military use, and maybe they were the first mountain bikes. Who knows? But anything is possible. The orange bikes rumor is mentioned in the literature here, so it's probably at least partially legit. Another thing that's mentioned here in the literature is that when the Navy came up to clean up, they actually buried a lot of the debris. And then, of course, they left a lot and then they took some out. There were reports that the plane carried someone who was part of the Manhattan Project, which resulted in the atomic bomb. The boys who discovered the plane reported that they found strange orange, quote-unquote, Japanese bicycles strewn about. So this was from the 12-year-old kids that found it first. So if those were top secret, they were probably removed very quickly. That's going to kind of bring to a close our time here at the crash site. Hope you enjoyed it. Stick around though if you're interested in the rest of the hike, because I'm not going to return the way I came. I'm actually going to continue on the Vic Hahn Trail, and that's going to take me down to railroad grade at the intersection of Hukuiku, which I mentioned earlier. So if you want to see what that looks like, most people come up from that way, so it might be interesting to you. And then I'm going to try to circle around on railroad grade and then catch another trail that'll take me back up to the summit. So if you want to stick around for that, great, please do. If not, don't forget to like and subscribe. But if you want to walk with me the rest of the way, do stick around and I'll show you back up to the top. It won't take much time, but we'll show you the major landmarks along the way. And I'm hoping that the fog is going to clear out and we're going to get some great views of the San Francisco skyline. And we're going to head out the trail that we didn't come in on, which is the main trail. Remember, I came in kind of the wrong way, but kind of knew where I was and then cut across and found the wreckage. So we're going to show you the hike out, and you're kind of ducking in these little manzanitas. It's kind of cool. And even though I felt like I kind of knew where it was, it still was a little bit of a challenge to find. All right, folks, so now we're walking out on the Vic Hahn Trail, and I'm heading south from the wreckage. So this is the new part of the trail that I haven't been on. And as I mentioned before, this is the way that most people normally come in. And this is going to take us back out to the railroad grade. I'm going to hike up railroad grade a little bit, and then we're going to catch another trail, and I forget the name. I'll tell you when I get there. That'll take us back to the summit. And I'm not sure if it's going to clear out. I'd really like to have the view of the San Francisco skyline, so let's see if that happens. All right, folks, it cleared out as I had hoped. And this is the view of the bay that I wanted to show you. Look at that. That is absolutely gorgeous. What an incredible view. So that's the San Francisco Bay there, and you can see it going way over to the left there. I'm going to pan with a telephoto so you get a better view of it. All right, and this is the extreme telephoto version. Right in the center there, that's San Quentin Prison. And then you can see the San Rafael Bridge, the little island there next to the bridge, which I forget the name of. And then we're going to pan over to the sort of Sausalito. He's on that little bay closest to us. And then further out is Tiburon, and then that little bump on the right is Belvedere. And then between them, in the distance, is Angel Island. And as we go over this way, this is where you see Alcatraz, that little bump there. And the Bay Bridge is visible, but it's really in the haze there. And then you see the San Francisco skyline there. What a beautiful day. Nice clouds. All right, folks, this is where the trail comes out to railroad grade. There's some stairs right here. There's a sign right behind me that I'll show you. And that's just the typical no horses, no bikes, no trail building, and no cutting wood. And over here you can see this is the sign for the Vic Hahn Trail. So we're going to step down to the railroad grade here, which was obviously called railroad grade because there was once a train that Took folks up here before the cars got popular. And then over to my left here, well, I'll show you the sign here. This is the sign for Old Railroad Grade. And if you look on the right side of the sign, that's the Hukuiku sign. And this right here is Hukuiku. And this is the one that Gary Fisher named a bicycle, one of the mountain bike models after back in the day. I can sort of pan up and you can see the summit up there in the bright light. So that's where we got to get back to. So folks that come up the normal way will come from down below there, Mountain Home, and then they're going to come up railroad grade until they get to this Hukuiku trailhead here, and then they're just going to head up the Vic Hahn. So that's how you do it the normal way. And I'm not discouraging anyone to do it the way I did it, or the way I'm doing it from the top. I think it's pretty cool. And I was already familiar with the other one, so that's why I wanted to try it from the top, which I'd never done. So what I've got to do now is I've got to walk up railroad grade and then find the trail that heads up back up to the summit. The older gentleman heading up the hill is on an old road bike. Before the advent of the mountain bike, people were doing that and realizing that, yeah, you can do it, but it's not exactly the right tool for the job. But I've ridden my road bike up this road plenty of times, and it's pretty rough actually, but if you're just careful, it's very doable. You can see railroad grade winding down below us. I did realize there's something I forgot to mention about the plane crash, and that is, I mentioned that they took off and they knew they had engine trouble right away after they took off, and they were in the process apparently of trying to turn around and return to the base. I knew the visibility was zero, but of course they're flying with radar, and they were actually aware that the mountain was there. And the lore has it that had they turned just a few seconds earlier, they would have had a chance of making the turn, and the accident maybe wouldn't have happened as long as they were able to get back to the base with the engine trouble. And I think I mentioned that those PBMs, they were not overly powerful, but I don't know how well they'd fly with a full load in one engine, but maybe the other engine was partially working. But it's pretty clear that they probably were not able to climb, but descending back to the airport might have been totally feasible. So it's a tragedy that the timing wasn't just a little bit different. All right, folks, here's the continuation of the railroad grade, and we're going to head up this way. And our trail is called Fern Creek Trail. Oh, that's interesting. The sign says, "Do not ride, carry, walk, bike on this trail." It says no bikes, but it sounds like they're okay if you carry your bike up here. I don't know why you'd want to do that, but I don't know that I've ever seen that before. Yeah, so there's a little steep thing to get up. And we'll switch back here. And hopefully it'll mellow out, because we've gained some of our elevation back on that hike along railroad grade. I think I was on there for maybe a mile or so. The Fern Trail is pretty cool so far. I've come to these steps, and as I'm going up the steps, I'll tell you a little bit about the legend of the mountain. So Mount Tamalpais is sometimes referred to as the Sleeping Lady. And there's some old myth about an Indian maiden that came to rest there many, many moons ago. And to be honest, I thought Tamalpais was the Native American word for sleeping lady, but it's not. It just means West Hill or West Peak or something like that. The mountain was called Sleeping Lady just because that's what it looked like. Native tribe that we're talking about is the coastal Miwok. And I live in the East Bay, and I can see Mount Tamalpais. And to me, it looks like a lady lying on her back. And so I thought that was the viewpoint that contributed to the namesake. But what I'm told is, if you view Mount Tamalpais from the north, it looks like a lady sleeping on her side. And apparently there's some features on the mountain that also look like hair. Well, this is interesting. Cruising along the trail here, and there's a water tank, and it looks to be operational actually. You can see the water flowing out of the top there. So I guess it's being used for, maybe they pump the water from here up to the summit. Here's a pipe right here that's feeding it. There must be a spring over that away, but I know they have water at the summit and they got to get it up there somehow. Oh, now we're on a pipe right on the trail. So I have to assume that maybe they're pumping it up the hill here. All right, this trail is no joke. Here's a rocky section that we got to climb up. And then at the top of this, there are more stairs. And I have to say there are a lot of stairs, which helps out a lot, but it does mean that you're climbing a lot. All right, so here we are. You can see the sign there, it says East Peak that way. And this is the alternate road that used to be open to cars, but now is just used for pedestrians and cycling. If I look straight across the road, I see another trail, which I think it goes where I want it to go, so I'm probably going to take that one. All right, so I'm on the road actually. I'm going to take the road up to the East Peak. The trail is a more roundabout way and it actually goes to the parking lot, which I don't want to do right now because I think I want to maybe hike up to the real summit, finish this puppy off. It's a mountain biker heading up to the summit. Well everyone, I hope you enjoyed coming along on this tour to check out the Martin PBM Mariner plane crash. It was pretty awesome. Glad we found it. It was definitely worthwhile. The hike turned out to be pretty difficult. It was only about 5 or 6 miles, but there's a lot of elevation and rough trails, so keep that in mind if you want to do the loop that I did. The other thing that I thought of that didn't occur to me until now is that if you want to start from Mountain Home and avoid having to drive to the summit like I did, you certainly can do the loop that I did from the lower, more typical starting point, and then you could go to the airplane wreckage, and if you want to continue and make the big loop around like I did over the summit, you certainly can. But as I say, that's quite a difficult hike. So anyway, appreciate you coming along. Please leave a thumbs up if you liked the video, subscribe if you want to see more like this, and until next time, thanks for watching.